Hello and welcome to the 2024 New Testament Bible Cal Live number 13. So tonight we only have 3 chapters to go over, chapter 22 through 24 in Luke, and that will conclude the book of Luke. And then next week there will be no live. I'm having surgery on Monday. There will be no live Tuesday. Next week, you have no reading assignments. The following week, assuming I'm home and well, I can try to do the live. We will only have done 2 chapters in the next book, so I don't know if you want to do a live for, well, I guess probably we should do it for just, even if we just do it for the 2 chapters, it can just be nice and short. So let me see if I can do this comment. I'm on the phone. Hold on. Hi, AJ. Oh. Post comment. There is the link. If you want to come up and join me. Okay, so so tonight's probably won't be real long. Next week there will be no live. The week after we can do a live, but it'll only be on 2 chapters from the book of John. So I've been working on my blanket, and I put a row together to make sure that it's going to be the right size, and just to see how it went. And so I will show you. Man, this obviously wasn't sewn together properly, but I will show you what I have. So here is the start. This is the bottom row. And you see how the pinwheels are kind of going in between the other pinwheels. So that's done correctly. That one's done correctly. Then we go to this, which is kind of close to correctly. But then we get to this one. I don't know, maybe it's kind of close. Maybe it's where I looked at it when I pulled it out. And then we go to this one. And then we go and see this one is off. So I don't know what I did. I know that they are maybe they're wrong. Maybe I put the wrong one there. I'm going to have to take that apart. And then this one is done wrong too. So if this one is the wrong one, that would make sense if that is off and that one is off, because the pinwheel should go in the center of one pinwheel, should go in the center of the other pinwheel like that. So now that I showed you that, I can see that I made a mistake and I'll have to correct it. Okay. So I did that to give people a chance to get here. And let's see. If you need to wait another week. So I left my glasses in the RV, so I'm going to be struggling a little bit to read this and my notes. Another week, completely up to you, but I know that I would love to know how you are. But I will be asking you that before that Tuesday. Yeah, the thing about putting it off another week that concerns me is that then we would have the 6 chapters of the following week plus the 2. So then we'd have to do 8 chapters in one live, and that might, run us a little bit long. I meant to show you what I was doing today and forgot to. I need to take a picture and post it for you. Me come up. Yeah, will you please? Because I can't believe I forgot my glasses. That was a bad move on my part. So I apologize for that, but that would be helpful. Then I don't have to try to read that. I'm already going to be struggling to read this. So I opened my binder so I can take my paper out, because chapter 22 I wrote in pencil, which does not help me to read it any better. I hear you, so you must be on.
I shut the other
I
one
hit
off.
the wrong button. I hit the, for you to come up, I did the thing, and then I hit invite. So the link came up again. I'm like, and I went back out and I hit you, but I didn't see anything happen. And the link came up again. I'm like, oh no. And then I heard you, so I knew that I was good.
You must have heard it right as I was shutting off the other chat.
I think that what I heard was like the mic. You hit the mic. It sounded like you hit a mic or something. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so chapter 22, we're starting the end here, right? Chapter 22 is close to the end. So it started out with the festival of the unleavened bread called the Passover, right? And here Luke tells us, that the chief priests were trying to kill him. They didn't want to do it in the crowd because they were afraid of the people. And the thing that caught me was that he says that then Satan entered Judas, and he went to discuss with them how he might betray Jesus. Now, Luke's the first one who said that Satan at that moment entered Judas. Everyone else has just kind of passed that fact by. So I thought that was kind of interesting that it's saying here that he entered Judas to cause him to betray Jesus. I mean, we'd think he didn't join the group to betray him, but you never know, right? Okay, then we go to the Last Supper, and as we talked about before, Jesus sends Peter and John to find the man, who's carrying the water, tells them who they're going to find, what he's going to be doing, what they need to do, and what they need to say to the owner, so that they can then prepare for the Passover meal. Then it goes on to say, when the time came, they all gathered at the table, and Jesus said, I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat it again until it finds fulfillment in the kingdom of God. And then he says that also about the wine. When he passes the cup, he says that he will not drink. Let's see, what does he say? I will not drink again from the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes. I don't remember the other people saying, specifying that. He just says, this is my body, this is my blood, eat it in remembrance of me. So then again in Luke, he says, then after the supper, now he's done these two things before they eat. After the supper, he took the cup again, saying, this cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. But the hand of him who is going to betray me is with mine on the table. The Son of Man will go as it has been decreed, but woe to the man who betrays him. Let's see. Oh, I said, I don't know, but at hearing this, I think I would have second guessed my decision to betray him. Right? If Jesus said that to me and I was the one who was going to betray him, I hadn't done it yet, but I had planned it and I was going to do it. And he says this at the table in front of everyone. I think I would have second guessed that decision to betray him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, it doesn't say that Judas did that, but. So then, like we talked about again, they question among themselves, was it going to be them? Who was it? Then they started arguing about who's going to be who was considered the greatest of the apostles. He then talks to them about the ones who serve and those who are served, but reminds them that he is sitting at the table with them as one who serves. So he's saying, here I am the Messiah. You guys have seen everything that I can do, and I say what I say, and I know what is going to come and what's going to happen. And yet here I am sitting among you as one who serves with you. Right? That's telling him that that's the example we're supposed to serve. Then he says in verse 28 to 30, because I know you're looking, you are those who have stood by me in my trials, and I confer on you. Yeah, just as my Father conferred one on me, so that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom and sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. But I have prayed for you, Simon. Oh, and then in verse 32, he goes on to say this. But I have prayed for you, Simon, that your truth may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. And of course, this is a prelude to the fact that Peter is going to deny him 3 times, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's interesting that he singles out Simon and says, I have prayed for you. And then tells him that he knows he's going to fail, but that he's going to come back and he's going to then strengthen his brothers. And then, of course, Simon does exactly that.
Isn't that because Simon is basically the one who's been helping lead the path since he joined? But honestly, I don't know if I got that out of the scriptures or from watching The Chosen.
I think that the thing is that so I have this question that always comes up because it's always Simon and someone else who he takes with him to do the important things up on the mount or whatever. It's always Simon and someone else. But then I also feel like he tells them all that they're all equal.
Right. But yet he does. I recognize that too. Every time he goes up on the mountain, just takes a couple people. Simon is always one of them.
Right. Or when he goes to heal someone or when he goes on a certain mission, it's always Simon and the other one. I forget which one it is. But yeah, so
Well, Simon is Peter.
Yeah, right? And I think, right. And I think that I felt like Simon questions Jesus more than anyone else. Like He's the first one to answer. He's the first one to question, and he's constantly questioning. He's not afraid of Jesus, where it seems like everyone else is more timid about it.
Yeah, they kind of hover and they talk among themselves, but Simon will actually talk to him and ask him. And lots of times he'll be the one that asks them the question that everybody wants to know.
Right. But I don't know. I hesitate to say that he was the leader because really Jesus was the leader, right?
Right. I guess leader wasn't the word that I was meaning, but I couldn't think of the actual word I was meaning.
Yeah, I think Simon's just more vocal, and so he's more out there. And Jesus rebukes him a few times too. So let's see.
Jesus prays.
Jesus is always praying.
The next part's the Mount of Olives, so I didn't know if that's what you were looking for.
Well, I'm on verse 35 and I'm trying to read what I wrote. It says, next we see Jesus reminding them that when he sent them out before, they were to take nothing, but also lacked nothing, right? Which they, of course, say that's right. We lack nothing. But now he is telling them to take what they have, including swords. So now, before they were told not to take purses, not to take money, not to take shoes, not to take, and now he's saying, take all these things with you. And the commentary I read states that initially, when the disciples were sent out, Jesus was on earth and well received, right? People were
able
searching
to
after
protect
him.
them.
Right. But now they will be sent out after he has been crucified. So he is no longer someone they're seeking. Now he's, they're hostile towards him, and they needed to be prepared, which I thought was kind of a good summary of why the difference in the first time they sent him out and the second time. Because I don't know that I'd have thought of that on my own. I mean, I might have, but, Then Jesus concludes, that's enough, which meant more about it being enough of this talk rather than two swords being enough for the battle. Because, they said they only had two swords. So then I skipped to 39 through 46, where Luke tells that which happens on the Mount of Olives, Jesus praying, his disciples falling asleep as falling into temptation, right? Rather than just falling asleep, he's saying they fell into temptation when they fell asleep. And then Luke also tells us that an angel appears to Jesus as he prays that strengthens him. Now, no one else has mentioned that. So when Jesus is praying and saying, Father, not my will be done, but yours, if you can take this cup from me, please do, that an angel appeared to him to give him the strength that he needed to get through this next stage of his mission. Which I thought was kind of interesting, because that's something we all need, right? And we're constantly looking for that strength. And here's Jesus praying, and we weren't told before that an angel was sent to him to give him the strength that he needed. I don't know. What do you think about that, what I just said?
Yeah, I like that he told us that. I mean, because it wasn't before. And it was like he asked, straight to his father if you are willing, and then didn't have anything.
Right. Okay, so then I just put Jesus was arrested. Peter disowns him. The guards mock Jesus, because I feel like we already kind of talked about this. And then when we get down to 67, where Jesus is sent before Pilate and then Herod, right?
I just saw something interesting, though, before that.
Okay.
Since I hadn't read this, I know I would have marked it. Where Jesus says, while he was still speaking, a crowd came up, and the man who was called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus asked him, Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?
Which, of course, he knew he was, right?
Because we knew
plan.
before the sign was whoever he kissed would be who they were to take, but
Right.
Jesus didn't say anything to him in the ones before that I remember.
Right. And he says it, he tells him now that he knows what he's doing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now I know why the servant of the high priest got his right ear cut off too. So, okay. I found that interesting that Jesus said that though about, are you betraying me with a kiss? So
Yeah. Yeah. So, of course, Pilate, takes him and questions him, and he answers, "If I tell you, you will not believe me, and if I ask you, you will not answer," which has been the pattern, right?
mhm.
But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God. Then they ask him if he is the Son of God, to which he replies, "You say that I am." I just can't get over. He always says, "Well, you say that I am," or "You say it so," instead of saying yes or no, or, you know. So this was ultimately a warning to them by Jesus that although they judge him now, he would one day sit in judgment of them. Right? Did you get that?
Mhm.
Okay. So then that is all of chapter 22. And nobody else has come in, right?
Nope.
Okay, then chapter 23 starts with Jesus is taken to Pilate, and there's, of course, false accusations were made against him until he says, "You have said so." Again, it's the "you have said so" thing. And then he's asked, was he the king of the Jews? Or what is that? "You have said so." When asked
That's where he
who was
said,
the
"You have
king of
said
the
so,"
Jews.
as King of
Yeah.
the Jews. Before that, he had said, "You say that I am."
Then when Pilate said he found no basis for a charge against Jesus, the crowd resisted his decision. Then, realizing that Jesus was actually under Herod's rule, he sent Jesus to Herod so he didn't have to do anything.
Now that's the first time we've heard that too.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't think that we'd heard before that he sent him to Herod. I think they said something about Herod in the last book, but it didn't make it sound like Pilate had sent him there.
Yeah, well, it gets better yet. I think that, well, I'll talk about this at the end. But, so Herod is pleased because he'd always been wanting to see Jesus, of course, for his own reasons and motivation to see miracles or whatever. But because Jesus would answer none of his questions, Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him. Dressing him in an elegant robe, they sent him back to Pilate. So they put him in the robe and sent him now back to Pilate. So we didn't hear that. Even if we heard that he was sent one way, we didn't hear he was sent back again.
Right. And then it says they became friends and they had never been before.
Exactly. Right. Crazy, huh?
Yeah.
But even at this point, Pilate still is saying he's found no basis for the people's, hold on, charges against Jesus, continuing that neither had Herod because he sent him back. He said Jesus had nothing to deserve, had done nothing to deserve death. But the people shouted, "Away with him! Release Barabbas!" The crowd insisted Jesus be crucified, and although he didn't agree, he succumbed to their demand, which I find interesting that that he would do that.
Yeah. So did I mean, and the whole reason that they're crying out for it is because the Pharisees and them are sitting there in the crowd inciting them.
That's right.
Which this isn't bringing that out, but we know that from earlier.
Right.
So the only people who really wanted Jesus dead was the Pharisees.
I think so. I mean, I'm sure there were other people, but
and the teachers of the law.
Right. And the Sadducees.
In my notes, I have them as they. I put they with an asterisk next to it, so I know that that's who I'm talking about, and I don't have to write it out all the time.
Yeah. So then we go to the crucifixion of Jesus. As he was being led to the cross, women mourned and lamented for him and what they witnessed. But Jesus tells them, "Do not weep for me, but for yourselves and your children." And so here he was referring to those in Jerusalem when it would be destroyed. For the women would wish they were barren because, they're not going to want to watch their kids being destroyed because they're there.
For the time will come when you say, "Blessed are the childless women, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed."
And that's specifically what he's talking about, the destruction of Jerusalem, which he knows is coming because of their, ways. And then he goes on to say that if this is the fate of an innocent person, what will happen to the guilty? Him being innocent, right? If this is his fate, that they beat him and mocked him and, did all these things and then crucified him, and he was totally innocent, what is that going to, what's going to happen to the guilty?
And the way he says it, for people do these things when the tree is green, what will happen when it is dry?
Mm-hmm. So let's see, verse 34. When Jesus was crucified with the other two men, he prayed out, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit," and he breathed his last breath. Wait, I missed something. Hold on. So then after that, to which one of the men said, "This man has done nothing wrong," and then asked Jesus to remember him when he was on his kingdom. One of the two men who were crucified with him does that. Jesus answered, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." So here again, we see the man is confessing his sins, right? Saying he's accepting Jesus. I mean, it's the last moments of his life, but he's still doing it. And Jesus tells him he'll be with him.
Truly, I tell you, you'll be with me. I have a question, and I've wondered this the last 3 times, and I don't think about it when we're in the lives. What does it mean when they say above here that, and they divided up his clothes by casting lots?
Yeah, so they took his clothes off of him, and they divided it up, like to sell it or give it to whoever was the highest bidder.
Okay. That's what I was thinking, but I wasn't positive.
Yeah. That's what they did. So let's see. Then we have the death of Jesus, right? The curtain in the temple is split in two. Jesus called out in a loud voice in verse 46, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." And he breathed his last breath. So it's interesting to me that He even commanded when he'd had enough, so to speak, right? Like Jesus knew he was going to be crucified. He went to the cross and did all those things and suffered through what he suffered through. And then he says, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And that was his last breath. Like, that's it. Take me now. Whatever. But, you know, I thought that was interesting. I didn't know that before. I
And
don't
then
think.
the last time when Pilate had said, in the last book that we read, when Pilate said that was quicker than anybody had ever, that makes sense when you think of that and pair it with this.
Mm-hmm. Right, because my understanding is they could hang there for days. It took days, and then I want to say they weren't even like taken off the crosses; they were just eaten, and yeah. And this was like what, 3 or 6 hours or something, then from beginning to end.
And then that's why it shows why it's more important when the man came and asked if he could take Jesus and bury him.
Right, right. So, of course, he's granted that, right? And he takes Jesus' body down, wrapped it, and placed it in a tomb because he didn't have time to, put the oils and do all the things that they normally do when they bury. He just had to take him down and wrap him up and put him in there. Then the women who had followed Jesus went home and prepared the spices and perfumes for the burial. And then that's the end of chapter 23. Which is kind of weird to me that it says that at the end. Because if he was placed in the tomb, so if you're buried and you're placed in the tomb and a big rock is put in front of it, how are they going to get those herbs and perfumes to him anyway?
It doesn't say that they put the rock back over it. I thought it was the king's men who pushed the rock against it so nobody could get in there.
I don't think they left the tomb open, did they?
The rock, one of it, which I think they had it so that you could move between the rock and the tomb, though, like not completely open, but you could still get in. Because it was preparation day and the Sabbath was about to begin, which is why they didn't do all the things.
Right.
Saw the tomb and how his body was laid in it. Then because I know in the previous ones they have said that it was the soldiers that Pilate had told the soldiers, or whoever had told the soldiers to go and make sure that nobody could get into,
Right,
into the
because
tomb.
he said he was going to come back, right?
Right, because he said that he would be back. So they are the ones who shoved the rock against it so that nobody could get in and out. I think I read that in the very first book in Matthew.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds familiar to me. You're probably right. It just still seems kind of weird, like out of place. They buried him. They still wouldn't be able to do it for 24 hours. They think it's just going to be left where they can get in after that. When Jesus said he'd rise in 3 days. I mean, that they were so afraid of him while he was alive, they were going to make sure that, you know, they could do whatever they could do to make sure he didn't rise in 3 days.
Right.
And of course they would suspect if he didn't that somebody would go in there and take that body.
Right, to make it look like he rose.
I don't know. It just seemed kind of out of place to me. I mean, I guess you'd want to do it if that was the practice to do that before you buried him and you didn't have the time, then you would go home and do it and hopefully you could go back and do it right. But
Yeah. Well, because it says then when they went, they found the stone rolled away from the tomb. But I know they placed it. In the one that we read, I know that Joseph had placed the rock in front of it. But then I think it was Pilate who sent the soldiers to make sure that it was, and they pushed it up even farther. I remember. I remember reading.
Okay, I believe you. Okay, chapter 24. Jesus has risen, right?
Actually, I think he made them stay and watch it as well.
Stay and watch what? The rock being moved?
Yeah, but
Same.
stand there and watch over the tomb. I
Yeah,
think
they had.
it
I
was
think
like
they had
just one
guards.
night or something like that. They had to guard it.
Yeah. So on the road to
Emmaus.
yeah, I hate the words in here because I never know how to say it right. So it's interesting how they didn't recognize Jesus, although he spent time talking with them all about himself and the prophets. So even though they didn't recognize him personally when he was walking with them, he was talking about himself, probably saying things. I felt like he was saying things that should have given them a clue that he was him, right? And he was talking about the prophets and everything. And then it wasn't until he broke bread with them that they recognized him. But I felt like they spent a significant amount of time on the road walking and talking, and yet they never even had an inkling. And I think by now they've already the women have already said they've seen him.
Well, yeah, because I just caught a glimpse of something as right before that. That was before on the road to Emmaus.
Mm-hmm.
That the women had told him, but they did not believe the women because their words seemed to them like nonsense. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away, wondering to himself what had happened.
Yeah. So
And that's the
still,
first time they tell you that one of them actually went to the tomb.
that's true. Well, besides the two women. Yeah.
Right. Well, I meant one of the
Right.
apostles. Oh, and I meant to the other day you said something about all the people following him and why are they called disciples?
Mm-hmm.
Disciples are everybody who followed him, but then he named the 12 of his apostles.
Yeah.
So then everybody else was still disciples because they were following him.
I just didn't get that for some reason, and like I said, I knew my Bible pretty good until I had my aneurysm. And then I kind of am having trouble remembering and whatever. But I always really heard about them, the 12 being the disciples,
Right.
not
Right.
really differentiating like Luke has done for us, that they were the apostles and the rest of the followers were the disciples.
Right. And I
And
had
that's where
forgotten about that too until they wrote that he named them his 12 apostles. And they
and
had done
that's
it in
where
the
the
one before this.
confusion, I think that's where my confusion came in, because it's like, wait a minute.
I've
Yeah.
heard of them as both. I've heard of them when I'm in church and when they're talking, I've heard of them as both the apostles and disciples. So I think they started off as the first 12 disciples and then he got many disciples and then they became his apostles.
Yeah. And so in reality, I guess they still are apostles and disciples, but
Right.
it'd be easier if we could not co-mix it, you know, for understanding purposes and following
Mhm.
along, so it didn't confuse the lines to me. Okay, so the other thing was, so they didn't recognize him until he broke bread with them. But as soon as they recognized him, he disappeared from their sight. That's what my Bible said.
When he was at the table, he breaks bread, gives thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and he disappeared. Yep, from their sight.
Yeah. So it's like once he was recognized, that was it. He was gone.
And then they said, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked to us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?"
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they were like, when he said he was going to keep walking, they were like, "No, come, stay with us."
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't understand why they couldn't see him either, but he had his appearance changed and they were mourning, who they had seen as Jesus. But you would still think that they would have been, "Oh, you've risen," you
Yeah,
said.
I would have asked, especially if, the women had already come and said we saw him and talked to him. I would think. I would just think. I mean, but we weren't there, so.
Right.
Okay, so then Jesus appears to the disciples. See, and even here in my Bible it says to the disciples, but he's really
Mm-hmm.
meaning the apostles. This is what is written: the Messiah will suffer and rise from the dead on the third day, and repentance for the forgiveness of sins will be preached in his name to all nations, beginning in Jerusalem. You are witnesses of these things. I am going to send you what my Father has promised, but stay in the city until you have been clothed with power from on high. So that basically meant until he left and went to heaven and the Holy Spirit came down with them, right? That's when they would have had the power.
Mm-hmm.
When they wouldn't have the power while Jesus was with them because they'd have to wait for him to ascend. And then it's the ascension of Jesus, which, we've kind of talked about that too, unless you want to add something.
No, it's okay. I was reading back a little bit because I thought they were the ones he was walking and talking with, right?
No, just two of them, I believe.
Okay.
He was walking and talking with two of them, and then he went back and broke the bread.
Okay, yeah, two of them were going to a okay.
Yeah. And I don't think it says which two, it just said two of them, right?
Right.
And of course, one wasn't, now that we've said that, one wasn't Simon because he ran to the tomb instead to look.
Yeah.
Okay, so in summary, I like the book of Luke the best.
Well, yeah, he talked about more.
Yeah,
He gave
it was more
more
personal.
descriptions.
Yeah.
A lot
I
more
felt like
description.
I felt like it was more personal to just Jesus, like what he was going through, what he was feeling, what he was whatever. And then he explained things a little bit differently than some of the other guys.
But I also think that we needed at least, well, both of them. It was hard for me to read the same thing over and over and over, especially since this is my first time. I've read through most of Psalms, I think. I know I got all the way through Numbers in the Old Testament. But that's all I had gotten through was that and some of Psalms because there's a ton of Psalms.
Yeah.
I know I was somewhere in the middle. But to be reading the New Testament for the first time and to sit here and just reading it over and over, I'm like going, okay, we read this. And even through the second one, through Mark, I'm sitting here, going, okay. Oh, well, he added this. Okay. He's adding more. God. But Luke, at first I'm going, okay, we're reading it. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, he's putting in all these descriptive things. And that's why even when the chapters were only 2 pages long, it was taking me quite a while, because I had, on Monday, the day before I had my migraine, I was like, okay, I'm going to sit down and try and get caught up. I have like 3 chapters to get caught up, to get through Monday. I should be fine. I was able to read one within the time that I had, that I thought that I could allot for 3 of them. And I only got through one because all of the added stuff, and I'd reread to make sure that I understood what I read. And plus he added parables and stories that they didn't say.
Yeah, he added a little few details and stuff.
Right.
It's crazy. And I hear what you're saying about the repeating, because when I'm doing this and I'm writing things and I'm like, well, I don't want to keep going over the same thing again every single week. That seems a little extreme. But sometimes I feel like it's because he's making a point. It's like that's
Right.
something really important that we need to know and understand and
Mhm.
remember. And
And
that's why
plus,
we're
I mean,
repeating.
if you look at it, and this is, again, for anybody listening, this is coming from somebody who has not read the whole Bible and has not learned the whole Bible. This seems to be the most important part. It's like the part that we really need to get drilled into our hearts, is the time that Jesus was on earth and how everything happened. I know the whole Bible's important. The whole entire Bible is important. But this seems to be the part that, where we get to know and love Jesus
Right. Right.
as he was on earth in his human form.
And this, in the Old Testament tells us the old laws, and it gives us history on the beginnings, right?
Hmm.
And yeah, we need to know that stuff, and it's important, and it gives us kind of a foundation to know what Jesus came into and when he started. But yes, I agree. The way we need to live by is this part,
Hmm.
because
This
this
is
is the new
Jesus
law.
teaching you in his words what you're supposed to know.
Right.
Even when I was little, and when my parents weren't taking me to church and I was only getting to go every once in a while, I was always enthralled, because my dad has one of those big, big Bibles, probably about the size of my computer, like 17 by, or even 20 by 20. It's big.
Right.
And I think he got it when he was overseas in the Navy, but it's written in English, so I'm not positive. I don't know if it's his family Bible handed down. I'm not positive. But I would always get drawn to that Bible because it was on our coffee table, and it had the ends, cut out so you could put stuff on the bottom
Yeah.
at each end. And its home was on, the one side on the end. I would open it up to look at the pictures of Jesus, because it had beautiful murals and pictures with Jesus. And then I would go and look for all the red words and try to read what I knew was Jesus talking, because I had asked my grandma one day when she was there, what are the red words for? Oh, that's Jesus talking. She's like, that's what's important. That's Jesus talking. And so I would sit and I would just read, you know, all the words that I could read. So I guess I've read through some of it when I was little and had no idea at all what I was reading.
Right. You didn't understand it really.
Right. But I was always intrigued, and I told Bob, I said, I want to, that's the one thing I want to ask my, dad. That's the only thing I really care about having.
And you
Well,
think he'll give it to you?
and one other thing, but yeah, I think there's 2 things, because he brought home a tea set from Spain that he gave to his mother, and then my grandma gave it to my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always loved that tea set. He's like, it's not worth anything. I didn't pay much for it. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's beautiful. Grandma had it. Then, mom has it. It's just something that I love. But
Yeah.
if it came down to the 2, I'd rather have the Bible over the tea set. But anyway, you were asking something. I was going to say something. No, I don't remember what it was, but it just means a lot to me. And I think if I would ask him, yeah, I mean, he gave me his normal Bible, that his regular Bible that he used to take to church
Mm-hmm.
before he was excommunicated because of my mom not switching over to his religion when they got married. And that's a King James Bible, and it has his name on the cover. It's one that has the zipper around it.
Mm-hmm.
He gave that to me because I was the one who always wanted to go to church with my grandma. And that way, when I went to Bible study or when I went to see my cousins, I always wanted to go to church. It always seemed like my aunt would let her son and my brother get out of going. You know, but us girls, we had to go, which was fine by me. I wanted to go. So, yeah, he gave me his Bible because he knew that I was feeling left out because I didn't have a Bible. Everybody else did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that he will. I mean, I tried reading that one from the beginning to end, and I was like, no, I need one that tells me how to read it a little bit better.
Yeah, the King James is a tough one, but
I got through a couple of chapters, but
and you'll probably get through it a lot easier after you've learned the Bible. You know, like after you read this through, you probably could read it easier.
mhm.
But we didn't have a Bible when I grew up. I wasn't allowed to go to church. My friends invited me. I wasn't allowed. We didn't have one. We never went. But I think that's an older generation kind of. It was like a family Bible, so it was big enough for you know the family, I guess.
Yeah. That's my Bob asked me. He said, "Well, my family had one like that, and they wrote like the births and stuff like that." And I told myself, "I don't know if ours has that or not. I don't think it does because I think I would remember seeing it if it did." But
Unless it's like at the back or something, you just didn't notice.
maybe, but
Or you
when I
didn't
get to
think
see it
about it.
again, believe me, I'll be looking through it. I haven't seen it for a long time, so I'm
And you
hoping
still
they still
have
have
it.
it.
Mm.
I actually should ask the next time I talk to my dad, ask him if he knows if they still have it. I don't see them getting rid of it, but you never know. They're getting rid of a lot of stuff now because my mom never unpacked their house when they moved into a smaller one when Emily was little and she's 26 now. So, and she's been hurting herself by she's been really sick the last couple months because she caught her leg on the side of one of the boxes and it cut, and now she's just been having a hard time getting it healed, and she's been in and out of the hospital. And
She diabetic.
yeah, and going to the wound doctor and everything. We think it's finally healing. So,
That's a long time.
but yeah, but since we cleaned our house out this last summer, she called Bob yesterday and, where did you take your stuff and who do I need to talk to? And she's not like she was, like wanting to hold on to everything, or I'm hoping she's not. She had to be the one to go through the box so she knew what was in it. So she would know what could be given away and what couldn't, and blah blah blah. Now I think she's to the point we just need to get it out of here. So, and my brother and I have told her a long time ago, we don't want, you've given us enough. We don't want any more. So most of the stuff we got rid of is stuff that she gave us.
Yeah.
A lot of it. Anyway,
It's meaningful to her, but not to you guys.
I don't even know if it's meaningful to her.
Oh. Well,
I
at
mean,
some time it must have been, right?
at some time, she's to the point of where she could almost be called a hoarder.
Mm.
Not quite there. So I'm not calling her one, but she can still get in and out of the rooms, and she still has a bed that she can sleep on, and but every room has boxes of something in it. Except for my dad's. My dad made sure that was his is nice and clean, and he has whatever room on the floor is all his.
I don't know. People keep a lot of things for a lot of reasons, I guess.
Yep. I mean, I never wanted to get rid of a lot of our stuff, but we had to. But I was ready when it was time to. I was ready. So
Yeah.
some things I'm like, yeah, I want to keep this and that. I can't find some things that I went to overseas on a trip and I can't find my mementos. Those I want because I would like to get back in touch with some of the families that I stayed with.
Yeah.
Um, but if I don't, I don't put. But there's also a set of knitting needles in there that my grandpa brought home from World War II. Little teeny tiny lace ones to make lace,
Yeah.
and I would love to have them back. So I'm hoping that we find them. We had a tree go through the roof on our garage, and it had to be completely redone. And they were supposed to keep all of our tools and things. Bob told them, don't throw any of that stuff away. And when they brought all of our stuff back from the storage unit, none of his tools were in there. And we had been getting him tools for years.
That's a shame. That's usually the first thing people take is tools.
And then plus some of them he had gotten at an auction. So he had a whole set of Craftsman tools and the big red toolboxes and everything. They took everything. They took all my gardening equipment too.
Wow. They weren't insured or what?
Oh, we got stuff from insurance, but we wanted,
Your stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
I know.
I mean, we couldn't afford to go and buy those tools. You didn't get enough from insurance to cover
Right.
everything.
Right.
So,
And those guys know it. That's the thing is that they know it.
mm-hmm.
They'll know something will get paid and, they don't care.
And he knows that Bob told him to give him the tools back. So as far as they know, we could have them hiding somewhere, even though we don't. But that's the way they act.
Yeah, it's too bad. The world just crooked.
Yeah.
Oh, we need to do our thing. I almost forgot our devotional before we close. What's today, the 26th?
Yes.
Okay, so it says, the verse is Matthew 21:22. If you believe, you will receive whatever you ask for in prayer. So you can ask for anything in the world and God will give it to you. Not so fast. Remember that your relationship with God is a relationship. Praying for things must be couched in knowing Him, desiring His will and obeying Him. That changes prayer from give me this to whatever your will is. What about the times He seems to be ignoring your prayers? Well, sometimes God knows that what you want isn't what's best for you. That's hard, isn't it? Remember that He loves you and that His goal is for your heart to grow stronger in trust and love for Him. Don't give up, keep asking, but also keep trusting. And then the little comment on the bottom is 1 John 5:14 and 15 says, this is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to His will, He hears us. And if we know that He hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have what we asked of Him. So there you go.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for joining me and reading all our comments.
All 0 of them.
Yeah.
Your surgery is next Tuesday?
Monday on the 1st.
Monday? That's right. That's
April
right.
Fool's is my surgery.
Well, here it's going to be April Fool's and Dingus Day.
Yeah.
I know not everybody knows what Dingus Day is, but that's also Dingus Day because it's the day after Easter. So, and it's a day that we don't go anywhere. We stay in the house because people start drinking afternoon. Tina Tiffany says, God bless you all.
God bless you too, Tina. Welcome in. We're just ending.
I think she may have been listening. So, anyway, yeah, it's the day to stay inside because people hop from place to place that has sausage and green beer and whatever, pierogies. And she said, I've been here. So Polish dinners at different halls and stuff. And then there's the place where all of the politicians go to tell you what they're going to do for you, vote for them, blah, blah, blah. They all go there, but they drink everywhere they go.
Wow.
And my family's tradition has always been stay home. And when I met Bob, him and I have always been stay home. I've never gone out dingusing ever, and I never will. So,
yeah, doesn't sound very safe.
No, I don't understand why people do it. So my husband said it's very appropriate that it falls on April Fool's Day this year. So
Yeah,
it's a sad day.
I told my physical therapist, I go, I keep wondering if they're going to try to pull an April Fool's joke on me when I go in for surgery.
Well, I will pray for you that everything goes as planned. Because, when I went for my surgery, I got all hooked up and then an emergency surgery came in and I had to go back 2 days later to have my surgery done.
Oh, yeah, I don't want to do that.
Because I was supposed to have it on August 28th and I ended up having it on the 30th.
I remember that.
And not only was it 2 days after, but we had to drive all the way back home and then we had to drive all the way back down, which is why I know he did it 2 days instead of told me to come in the next day. Because he didn't want me to have to drive all the way home and only be able to eat to a certain time again, and then have to drive all the way back down the next day. So he gave me a day in between to get it out and yell and scream and be mad. But I wasn't mad at them. Emergencies happened, and if I was that emergency, I would want them to take care of me.
That's true.
So, and that's how I always look at it. People get mad. That's my husband, the hospital he works at and where we go for the ER is a trauma hospital. So sometimes you have to stay longer because, the traumas come in and they have to take care of them. Yeah. And it's the only trauma hospital like right around here. So it's busy a lot with traumas. And, somebody came up to me and said, can you believe we're still out here? Blah, blah. I'm like, you know what? We're in a trauma hospital. They have people coming in who've had traumas and need to be seen. If I ever have a trauma, I at least know that if I have one, they're going to take care of me.
Yeah.
He's like, I never thought of it like that. And I'm like, well,
now they will.
Yep. And the other hospital supposedly takes care of everybody, but as soon as they see you're on Medicaid or don't have insurance, they ship you over to the other one. So I won't go there for principle. I'm like, It's where my parents go. That's the only time I step in their doors. My doctor used to be a doctor in their section of doctors, so I went there for her, and she's not there anymore. She moved to our hospital. So I get to see her there, which is so much better. But yeah. I won't go to a hospital that I know of that's going to turn people away just because they don't have money to pay right then.
There's a lot of people who don't anymore.
Yep. So anyway, I don't mean to keep you on here. I know you wanted to have a shorter time since you only had 3 chapters, and I don't mean to keep talking and keeping you up here. So
That's right. We went, a good amount of time on the thing anyway. All right. So good night, everyone. God bless you. Have a great week. I'll see you, in 2 weeks,
couple weeks.
right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. Thank you, AJ.
Love you, hon.
I love you too. Love you, Tina. Bye.